Hi, welcome to Happy Tales. I'm Cheryl Rosenthal, Communications and Education Coordinator.
And I'm Joni Geiger, Executive Director.
And today our show is all about nutrition. And we're going to invite our special guest in today. We have Rhonda, who is our operations manager here at the Oshkosh Area Humane Society. And we're going to talk about the importance of diet, nutrition, what we feed, how we feed,
why we feed,
what animals should look like. You know, are they big boned, little boned, or whatever. So
right. And I think it's important to note that there's so much stuff out there, Cheryl. I mean, there's just tons and tons of. I mean, it's very
mind-boggling.
It is. It's crazy. I mean, it's just all the stuff that you have. You have the indoor, the outdoor, everything in between. So people really need to remember to look at ingredients, because that's what it's really all about. What are you feeding your animal? And it's all based on ingredients and what is the most important thing for them. So that being said, let's talk a little bit about that. People need to know where to look. Obviously, it's on the side of the box or the bag or whatever. Okay. And, what are some of the things that they should be looking for?
I encourage people to look for products that start with a meat. Cats are true carnivores, so they need a meat, and dogs need meat as a big part of their diet too. So that's what I encourage. And I kind of try to go with the rule of thumb: if you can't pronounce it, or you wouldn't be comfortable eating it, you might want to rethink it.
Right.
Most ingredients labels are on the side of the package, like you mentioned.
Sure.
And just like human foods, usually the first one or two ingredients listed are what the food is mostly made of.
Right.
So those are the most important ingredients, is the first couple listed.
Sure.
Right. So if corn or wheat are the first ingredient, you may want to think about, do I really want to feed this to my cat or my dog?
Right. And thinking in terms of what works for your diet, because they are similar. Corn is hard to digest for any creature, let alone being a staple in a pet's diet.
I had just read an article that said that cats absolutely have to have meat in order to survive.
Correct.
I mean, it's not like an option for them. So they have to have meat in their diet. And obviously, if you're buying a product that doesn't, like let's say the meat is, the third or fourth or fifth item, that means that cat has to eat so much more to get the proper nutrition out of that particular diet. So I know a lot of people look at cost and say, this is really cheaper, therefore, I'm going to save some money.
But they're feeding more.
They're feeding more.
And the more they're feeding, if it isn't nutritious, they're not absorbing that nutrition, therefore then you also have more waste, meaning you have more to pick up in the yard or scoop out of the litter box.
Exactly, and more vet bills. I like to let people know that you're going to spend a lot more on your vet costs, because when you're not getting proper nutrition, just like for a person, it can cause a lot of health issues.
Sure. You are what you eat.
Right,
and so it's better, what you spend in food, you save in vet bills.
Right, and if you actually do a little research and do your shopping, I can tell you that I do not spend a lot of money on my pet's food, but I'm still able to buy a pretty nutritious food with a decent label.
Quality food.
You don't have to spend a ton of money to do right for your pets as far as diet.
And Joni mentioned that, if it's a low nutrition type food, the animal is eating more of it. It also means that they're maybe absorbing some of the nutrients that they don't need, and some of that is being stored as fat. And so instead of feeding the body for what it needs, the animal is getting fatter and more plump, but because they're not getting the nutrition, they're still hungry.
Sure.
Have you ever had that happen? You're hungry for something and you just keep eating everything in sight, and come to find out you really weren't hungry at all, you were thirsty for water.
Sure.
And so the same can happen with our animals. They're eating, they're trying to find something to quench their hunger, and they're not getting it out of that bowl.
And in the same article that I had read, it talked about the fact that most cats do not get the water that they need. So they don't drink enough water. So let's, now people talk very often about, dry food versus canned food for cats. So let's discuss that. And
well, I've had cats for over 40 years. And when I started out, you should feed your cats dry food, because that crunching is good for their teeth and it keeps the tartar down.
And that is still the mentality that a lot of people believe dry food is the only option.
And now it's kind of swinging around the other way, that you should feed your cat more wet food, because when they eat wet food, they are more able to absorb the moisture from the wet food, then they get more moisture out of the wet food than they do by drinking water. They can't drink enough water. It's kind of like, you know, drinking 8 glasses of water a day, but it's sometimes easier to get your moisture intake by eating watermelon if you compare it with a person, or eating some kind of fruit that has juices to it. And so for a cat to be able to eat wet food, they'll get more moisture, and which is better for them.
And a lot of times the canned varieties of food actually have a higher meat content for animals.
I was just going to say that.
And it's really important to look at the label for canned food too, because not all meat is equal, as people know. You will see a lot of labels will list things like byproduct or meal. And just because it may have the word chicken or beef in front of that, it does not mean that that's an actual meat. So it's important to recognize, you know, the difference.
Why don't you pick up a can here, Rhonda, and let's take a look at it.
Yeah, so for example, this one, and we won't talk about any brand names or anything, but the first ingredient listed here is salmon. And it doesn't say byproduct, it doesn't say meal, so we know that that's a whole meat, a real meat. You know, something your cat would be interested in to begin with. So you want to avoid things, you know, here's just another example. And most, like I said, most of these canned foods actually have a better ingredients label than a lot of the dries, because they're, you know, wet foods, they're more real. The first ingredient in this can is water sufficient for processing. So I mean, that gives you a little idea of how they can be different. They're both, and the second ingredient is chicken. And then you can see here they list meat byproduct. Who knows what that is? You know, so I do caution people to watch out for that, because you wouldn't go buy a pack of steaks that's listed, you know, beef byproduct and be comfortable eating that for your dinner. You know, you're looking for specific cuts or whatever. So you want to kind of try to do the same for your pets.
And then again, age plays a lot in diet. You know, if you have a puppy or you have a kitten, you know, you should be feeding the appropriate foods, and the same thing as animals get older. Should their diet be changing?
Well, it depends on what you're feeding. A lot of the higher quality, more premium foods that are out there that you do spend a little bit more, they are actually going for more of an all life stage type of food now.
Type food.
A food that's fine to feed your puppy to your senior, whereas some of the other foods still have the you know, puppy, middle-aged, senior. So it really kind of depends on what you're feeding. If you are feeding a food that does have life stages or different options, you should probably stick within, you know, the option that best fits your pet's age group. But if you're feeding one of these ultra premiums, they mostly work for all stages of life and don't differentiate
and, you know,
either.
on the boxes, on the bags, it always says feed your pet this much. Should you follow that exactly, or should you? I know for myself, I feed a quality food at my house for my dogs. I'm going to talk about my dogs. And the food that they're fed is human grade quality ingredients. And we were feeding what it said on the bag, and all of a sudden we noticed that one of our dogs was kind of turning into a chunk, and he really liked it. And we went to the vet and they said, you got to cut back a little. So because he really liked it and it was good for him, but it also put on the pounds. But then we had to back off a little bit.
I think that's a great place to start, is to look at your bag of food and kind of get an idea of what they're recommending for the size of your pet. But just like with people, there are so many factors at play here. Your metabolism, your exercise, you know, what are you doing for the day? Does your dog sleep 10 hours? Or, you know, so I think you have to start there, work with your vet, and work with, you know, your family as far as the amount you're feeding and at what times of day, and just kind of watch your pet and adjust as needed.
And when we're feeding our pets, treats count, people food count. All those things add. It can sway the balance one way or the other.
Which a lot of people don't think about. If you have a dog that you're taking through a puppy class or an obedience class and you're going, you know, let's say once or twice a week, plus treats at home when you're practicing, you have to factor all that into the total amount of your pet's diet, or you will see a big weight gain. And I think it's important to mention here that for pets, every pound of weight that your pet is overweight is the equivalent to a human being 10 pounds overweight. So while a lot of people's pet might be 2 or 3 pounds overweight and they may say, oh, it's just a couple pounds, well, to you, but to your dog, that's 20 pounds of extra weight they're carrying around. And on their whole body.
And on large dogs especially, can cause hip problems, back problems down the road. And, you know, just like people, I don't know about you, Joni, I'm not getting any younger, and I find that if I gain a pound, it's harder to get rid of it.
Yeah.
And the same is true with our pets. Once
Right.
they've gained that weight, so it's so much easier to keep that weight off and to kind of have that compromise between, you know, exercise and a healthy diet. Just like for us, we got to do the same thing for our pets.
Well, let's talk about a consistency in diet, because that's one thing that, you know, obviously we encourage people not to go out and I'm going to buy this week,
this is on sale this week,
yeah,
and
and
yep.
this is on sale, and this is on sale, and why is that? Why do we not want to see people do that on a regular basis where they're changing diet? And I know Rhonda and I had a conversation about this earlier, and you know, what's your thought on this, Rhonda?
Well, pets' digestive systems work a little differently than ours, and they are not necessarily able to adjust as quickly to a new food in their diet as we might be able to. So if your pet is consistently eating chicken, you know, you buy a bag of food, a 20-pound bag, and it's chicken, and they get that every day, and then all of a sudden your next bag is beef, that might really upset their digestive system, and you may have a lot of diarrhea, upset tummy, you're
throwing up.
Yeah, your pup may not feel so good, or your
well,
cat.
and people may see this occasionally and not make that correlation.
Right.
At Thanksgiving time, we have a house full of company, and we think, oh, we're just going to give the dog a rawhide, or we're going to give them just a little bit of gravy on their
Right.
food, or something that's out of the ordinary, and then the next day their dog is either not feeling well, throwing
Right.
up, or has diarrhea, and they don't take into account that they gave them something very
a lot
different.
of new food, yeah,
Right.
new food. So yeah,
Well,
you want to
and-
try to be consistent. And
And
another,
we see it here, obviously, at
Right,
the shelter.
yeah.
I mean, I mean, we're kind of a, you know, a educational place for these types of things when diets change and when stress level and all the things that can add to the things that we're talking about really can create some problems. And of course, if we get a cat or a dog that comes in and they're on one diet and then suddenly we're changing them over to a next diet, it is very common to see an upset stomach, very common to see diarrhea. That's pretty normal.
Right.
And so obviously, even when we do an adoption with someone, we actually give some of the food that they're accustomed to eating here so they can slowly mix in
Right.
whatever we're
because
talking
if you
about.
do want to switch your pet's food, that is how you have to do it, is really slow and gradual. You're mixing in a tiny bit of the new with a lot of the old and gradually update, you know, adding more every day until you get there.
Okay, probably like over a 7 to 10 day period.
If you can stretch it out, yeah. The longer you can stretch it out, the easier it is on your pet's tummy. And another reason it's not a good idea to switch foods a lot of times is for medical reasons. Should your pet develop an allergy or a medical problem, your vet needs to know exactly what they've had in their diet most recently. And if you've done a lot of food switching, it's going to be really hard to pinpoint that one ingredient that may have upset your pet's system, you know, allergy-wise or tummy-wise. So you want to stick with something consistently so you're able to share that information.
Right.
Can we talk about special diets? Because not all animals have a special diet, but,
Right.
but we occasionally come across animals that have allergies, or perhaps they have a predisposed to a urinary tract infection, or thyroid, any of those kinds of things. And so when we talk about that, I mean, is there a diet for everything?
There pretty much is. Just like with people, there pretty much is. For any health issue that your pet has that may require a special diet, you want to consult with your vet. Don't try to diagnose it on your own and go purchase something at the store. Now, with that said, there are certain health issues that you can still feed over-the-counter food, but it's important you work closely with your pet's doctor so you're getting the right stuff. But they do make a prescription food for, you know, just everything you just mentioned, diabetes, thyroid,
and
allergies.
I'm just going to interject here. I have a cat that has chronic urinary tract infections, and you know, there for a while he didn't like his dry food at all, so we would put some of the wet special diet food on top of his dry food, and he ate it fine. And then all of a sudden we went through a phase where he wouldn't eat, he didn't like it at all, so we started giving him some of regular canned, and I'm here to tell you that it really it affected him, and he started having, it wasn't a full-blown infection, but he started having problems. And so we switched, and there are choices within the special diets to find the food that your pet will eat. And we switched him to a new canned food, which is for chronic urinary tract infections, and he absolutely loves it. And now there's, you know, we're just thrilled because he's on that special diet, but yet he's enjoying it. So if your pet is on a special diet and they're not enjoying it, don't try to compensate by giving them something they shouldn't have. Maybe ask your vet if there's another special food that you can try that maybe that combination might work for them.
And at some of the pet specialty stores, you know, we have some boutiques around now that kind of carry the ultra premium brands of food. There are some really knowledgeable people out there besides your doctor that have done a lot of homework on what's going to work for what. And those are great people to seek out, some pet nutrition experts, because they can really help you with that too.
Right. Absolutely. And I remember one case in particular here where we had gotten a dog that had come in that literally was almost bald.
Yeah.
I mean, the hair was gone. It was, you know, if you didn't know better, you'd swear it was a hairless dog. However, it was all related to allergies, and it was all related to food allergies.
And even his skin had been affected really
yeah,
negatively.
It was just tragic to see.
Right.
I mean, because obviously the dog had to be quite miserable. And so as it turned out, after some research and working with a veterinarian, they put this dog, the adopter put the dog on a raw diet.
Right.
And it was incredible. I mean, this dog is just healthy, shiny, beautiful coat. And so all those issues that dog had are now gone.
Right.
As long
Well,
as
and
she
people
sticks
have
to
to
the diet.
understand when we talk about raw diet, that always makes me kind of scary, because I imagine that, oh my gosh, I have to go to the grocery store and I have to buy chicken and I have to buy all these ingredients and I'm grinding it up and I'm cooking, you know. I have a hard enough time cooking for myself. And that's not true, because now the raw food diets, it's already prepared. It comes frozen in little medallions.
Right.
You take them out of the freezer, you let them thaw out, you take out, you know, a day's supply, and that's what this little dog that you were talking about is being fed. And so it isn't, you don't have to cook
It's
for
not
your
as
pet.
much of a chore as it
Right,
once was.
right. So
Yeah.
when people say raw diet, you know, you don't have to be doing, you know, the cooking yourself.
Right. Yeah, you have some
making
options.
sure, and they're making sure that in those raw diets that all the nutritional needs, the minerals and vitamins are all being met.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, well, guys, let's talk people food. And, you know, we mentioned it briefly, and I, for one, will admit I'm guilty. You know, when I have supper, we all have supper.
That's pretty common, I
It
think,
is common.
for most pet owners.
So I think we have to, you know, it's one thing to stand here and say, don't do it, but you know what? The truth of the matter is we do. And so I think let's use some common sense about that. So how are you guys going to comment to that?
I don't do it.
I do it, so I'll comment to that. I think Joni's right. Realistically, dogs and cats are going to get people food, especially if you have children in the house, which I can attest to. It's very common for my little guy to be like, here, dog, you know,
Yeah,
he likes to
right.
share. He feels bad that he's eating something good and they have dry kibble.
Right.
I think it's exactly about using common sense. You know, a little white meat chicken here or there for a treat is totally fine.
Vegetables.
A little vegetables, some fruits. Do your research. Some things are toxic to your pet and they should not eat them. You know, onions, chocolate, grapes, things like that. But some things, I think, in moderation, properly given, are okay. And when I say that, I mean, don't, you know, feeding off your plate, you're going to create a beggar.
Or the leftover mashed potatoes and gravy. Or,
Right,
you know.
right.
I do have to confess, I have a dog that will beg for romaine lettuce, and I think it's the craziest thing.
Yeah.
And I figure if it's romaine lettuce, let him have it.
I
you
mean,
know.
it's just a little extra water,
Yeah.
which we just talked about is good for
Right.
their diet. So,
Right.
and I think people food as a training tool, and we don't have to go into depth,
Right.
but it can be a really great tool. I often encourage people to use it as a Kong stuffer for when dogs are
Right.
home alone. Cats and dogs respond really well to high value foods, and people food is something we can kind of utilize that way.
Right.
But again, I think it's moderation. It's,
Yeah.
you know, obviously I would
Right.
never give my dog a bag of Cheetos.
Right.
Right.
Or you're not going to feed your
right.
dog hot dogs every day.
Not every day, but you know, occasionally if I need him to behave really well at an event or something, I might grab some hot dogs and slice
truth
them
be
up.
told, if we have a dog here that's suffering from an upset tummy or has diarrhea, we may switch to a bland diet, which would be browned hamburger.
Right, turkey
with
burger and rice,
Turkey
or
burger and
hamburger and
rice.
rice, yep.
Right.
So a really nice bland diet for a couple of days really
And
helps.
I
So-
think that, you know, and again, one of the articles that I had read is like no more than 5% of their diet should be people food.
Right.
So, I mean, that really kind of gives people an idea that, and I think you're absolutely right, we shouldn't be giving them potato chips. We shouldn't be, you know, those things high in salt.
Junk
you
food for
have
us is
to-
junk food for them.
Absolutely. I mean, we really have to really think about that.
Right.
But, you know, the truth of the matter is that A lot of people do it, myself included, and I know that I shouldn't, but
you're human.
You just can't
You're
resist
human.
those big brown
I
eyes.
can't. I just can't. Yeah. Especially when the cat walks on the table and says, "I'm taking
Give me
this."
this.
So, that being said, so I just wanted to address that because I think that's really important because I do think that there are a lot of people that do that.
And people can always call the shelter with questions about diet. We're happy to try to answer any of those questions you might have, or at least point you in the right direction to somebody who can help you.
Sure. Right. Okay. Well, we talked a little bit about diet now. We talked about like good things, bad things, and obviously the internet is a great resource, but your veterinarian really is the expert. So people should really, if they have very specific questions about a diet for their pet, they should be checking with their veterinarian and seeing what the recommendation is. But I'd like to bring in some animals now. Well, let's talk about, what's overweight, what's not, what's a good weight, and so people can get a better idea as to what really is, healthy.
Sounds good.
All right.
So this is Trinket. Trinket is a little dog we have here at the shelter. Trinket currently weighs about 22 pounds. I think it's pretty clear to see that Trinket is overweight. Ideally, Trinket should probably be like 15 pounds to 17 pounds maybe. It's hard to really tell because a lot of this is so bulky. It'll have a better idea when Trinket drops a few pounds. But we had kind of said before that each pound of weight Trinket is overweight is like carrying an extra pound of weight. So at 22 pounds, if Trinket is supposed to be 15 pounds, I mean, that's a lot of weight for this little frame.
That's 7 pounds and
which would equal like 70 pounds per person.
70
I mean, that's
pounds,
a lot of weight to carry around. And Trinket is nervous, but some of this panting isn't nerves. Some of it is just like, wow, I had to walk, 300 feet and I'm 70 pounds overweight.
And her heart is beating a lot faster.
Her legs are strained, her joints, her muscles, her back.
Especially
a lot
her
of little
hips.
dogs like to be held and picked up. You want a treat, but Seafood is still comfortable when she's nervous. A lot of little dogs like to be held and picked up, but not Trinket. She can't really enjoy that because it's so uncomfortable to be picked up at such a heavy weight. And you can just see it looks,
Right.
it looks
and
like a lot.
Dogs that are overweight are, more prone to getting arthritis as they get older.
That's right.
And any of you that have arthritis, it's painful. Sure. And
not just arthritis, but all obese-related health issues.
Right.
Heart, it's a strain
Heart
on the
condition.
heart.
Yep.
It's, stroke is a possibility. Diabetes is a huge possibility for this dog.
Absolutely.
Thyroid issues. There's a lot of issues that can come into play from having all this excess weight.
I have a pug at home, and they're difficult, especially as she matures, to keep her lean and mean.
Right.
And from a breathing perspective, the more weight she's carrying, and it's because she's got that short muzzle, it's really difficult.
The harder it is for
it
her
is
to
really
breathe.
hard.
Mm-hmm.
So
definitely.
So absolutely. Well, let's look at a kitty cat.
Okay.
And, let's go.
You
from
ready
there.
to go back? Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay, so this is Tabby. Tabby is a 9-year-old neutered male. Tabby is, I think, what a lot of average household cats look like.
Sure.
I would say Tabby's a little overweight, but I think most people would find it hard to say that he is.
Yep. They would say that he's just right.
He's just right, yeah.
So what makes him overweight?
Well, Tabby is about 14 pounds currently. I personally, when I look at a cat like Tabby, I think his midsection kind of gives it away.
Right.
Believe it or not, animals do have waistlines and should look nice and lean, and that's not really the case for Mr. Tabby.
Right. Well, and I have a 13-year-old cat, and he still doesn't have this belly.
Right. A lot of people think this is normal.
Yeah. He has a chest. He actually has, you can tell the difference between his chest and his stomach area.
Yes, they should have a shape in this midsection instead of just one giant.
But I do want to say something for gravity.
Yes.
As you mature.
Yes.
And the other thing is you should be able to feel their ribs.
Yes.
And I can feel Tabby's ribs if I push really hard.
Right. Well, the rule of thumb is that you should really only have a small layer of fat and skin between your finger and the rib. So if you've got like an inch of, something there before you feel them, like you just said, that's too much.
Okay, so he's not obese.
I wouldn't say he's like morbidly obese.
Right, but he is a little on the heavy side.
He's on the heavy side, and especially since he is not a declawed cat, I think that plays a little part of it. If he were declawed, I would imagine he'd be a lot heavier.
Correct.
But he's not. So
and And why would you say that though, Rhonda?
I think because declawing does affect how they walk and how they exercise and their quality of life and pain
They're less
associated
active.
with it. They're a lot less active. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Okay, all right. Okay, so, and then we're going to bring in a dog, and a dog that, you know.
Oh, I'm sorry. May I point out one thing with this? Whenever you are talking about overweight pets, and especially cats, I just want to point out here that if you have a cat that's this big at home and you're thinking about maybe I should do a diet for my pet, please check with your vet first. There are health risks related to losing
yes,
weight
yes.
too quickly, especially
Yes.
for an overweight cat.
Right,
So
right.
it is very
Oh, good
important
point.
that you really plan a diet for your pet to
And you
lose weight
slowly-
with a doctor,
yeah.
and you do it very slowly, because otherwise you could cause a lot more damage than you
Right,
started with.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, sounds very good. Thanks, Rhonda.
Sure.
Let's move on to a dog.
This is PETA. PETA is about an 8 to 9 month old mix of something or other. Maybe Shepherd, maybe Terrier, who knows. PETA is, I would say, the right weight for PETA. Just right.
Just right.
Has a waistline, has a defined chest. We can see there's a difference between the two. I can feel his ribs, but they're not sticking out or protruding.
Right.
So this is, you know, a lot of people might think he's skinny.
I'll be honest with you. A lot of people would look at this and say,
Yeah.
"Oh, he's
You
so
got to
thin."
feed that dog.
Yeah.
You got to fatten
Give
him
him a
up.
sandwich, yeah. He's just right.
Yeah, and I think we as Americans, because we are, you know, obviously a little bit heavier country.
Right.
Everything is seen in a little bit heavier.
And not
ideal
only
weight.
that, but I think for shelter pets specifically, when you rescue a pet, you have a tendency to feed with
Good
love.
point. Yeah, good point.
You know, you're so used to seeing these commercials where they're starved and neglected. When you get them home, you just want to give them all the food they can
Yeah.
handle.
Right.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times we create overweight pets, you know, out of really good intentions of our heart.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah. Food equates love.
Yeah, food equates love, which is,
And
yeah.
another thing about this dog, because of the energy level, this dog is going to burn off more
Yeah.
If
calories.
he gets
where-
the proper exercise,
Right.
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 Where a
Okay.
little trinket that was in here maybe wasn't getting the exercise that she
Right.
needed.
Well, and realistically, they're, like you just said, he's a totally different age, different type of dog. He's going to want to exercise a lot more than Trinket. So this guy, you're going to have less of an issue, you know, if you're doing a proper diet, keeping
Sure.
his weight maintained.
Right.
Whereas Trinket, it's going to be a little bit more tricky because you can't work it off as much on her as you can
Sure.
this one. So,
Sure. Okay. Well,
nice
very
to meet
good.
you, PETA.
Thanks, Rhonda.
Sure.
Well, I hope all of our viewers had a good time today and learned a lot about nutrition and things that you can do to keep your pet healthy and how to read labels on packages of food. And so until next time, happy
Happy
tails
tails
to
to
you.
you.